So let's talk about carbohydrates and Hashimoto's. Someone once asked me, what are some good carbs and what are some bad carbs that I should stay away from with Hashimoto's? And let's start with there are no bad foods. The fact that we think that there are bad foods is what causes us to feel guilty after eating certain things. If I say cupcakes are bad and I go out and have a cupcake, I could feel guilty after I have that cupcake. But foods provide us something on all levels of the spectrum. So instead of thinking that foods are bad or there are certain foods that we shouldn't have, think of foods as good, better, and best. Now, all foods are good because they either provide us some type of nourishment physically or emotionally. So it may provide us nothing as far as nutrient goes, but it gives us some nice dopamine and serotonin to balance out our mood. Better and then best. So start thinking of food on that spectrum. Also think of carbohydrates on that spectrum. Generally, women with Hashimoto's feel that they are carb sensitive or that they should go on a low carbohydrate diet, generally to induce some weight loss. But you need carbohydrates. It is your primary source of fuel in your body. And yes, some people can feel carb sensitive, and that's not because your body just doesn't like carbohydrates. It's because your insulin function is broken. And that generally comes with Hashimoto's. That's why often we see women with Hashimoto's also get diagnosed as insulin resistant, or they eventually get diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Or if they're going to develop additional autoimmune conditions, it's type 1 diabetes. And that's just because that insulin function is not working. If you remember from last week, I talked about cortisol, when it's released, turns off that insulin function. The more that happens, the more we're releasing cortisol and the more we're turning off that insulin, the cells can't take in those carbs that you've consumed into the cells to utilize them to create energy or to get stored later on. So eventually that insulin process doesn't work. So we feel like all carbohydrates make us puffy or all carbohydrates cause us to put on weight. Now, we don't want to focus on particular carbohydrates. We want to focus on repairing that system. Managing stress is one of the first things that you can do to help repair that system in the body. The next thing, which we talked about a couple weeks ago, was strength training. That will go miles with helping your body recover from any type of insulin resistance. So those are the two things that I would focus on instead of, should I cut out carbs or should I keep carbs?